Hello, this is lecture 2. I am continuing on the topic of the family photo and its genre and roots and so on. I had said at the end of the last lecture that I want us to consider how the family photo has transformed, and perhaps more importantly, I would like us to think about why the family photo has transformed, right? What exactly has made the change from, say, the morbid history of the photograph, and now this almost compulsively joyous history of the family photograph. So what has made that transformation, and why? Why has this happened? So photographs, as I had mentioned in the last lecture, are associated with a history of memorializing, of keeping track, of archiving our histories, right? That they are supposed to render permanent in memory what is in fact transient, fleeting, right? So the experience of time is always already unstable, that, you know, the minute we have registered it in the present, it is in the past already, right? The future is always one step ahead, so that, you know, the minute we get to the future, it's the present, and the minute it is recorded as something we have articulated, it is the past, right? So this fleeting, amorphous nature within which we experience temporality, which is time, the experience of time, is a deeply unsettling one, right? We can't really comprehend these age compartments in the temporal experience, past, present, future, unless we have a way in which to archive it and articulate it. Archive it meaning record it, have a sort of collection of ways in which it has been recorded, and then we talk about it, right? Unless we have that narrative completion, we cannot really understand it. That is our history of our relationship with time. So all forms in which time is rendered still, artistically, tend to have that archival quality about them, that record-keeping quality about them, and the photograph is no exception. We, therefore, also find ourselves wanting to record what we think of as important moments in time, right? Birth, death, marriage. Interestingly, divorce does not tend to be a much photographed substance, right? And I have to wonder why. Is there a sort of compulsive drive in modernity towards happiness that prevents us from recording unhappiness, as I mentioned in a question I posed in the last lecture? Or is there something about divorce that is so tied to litigation possibilities that we don't want to archive it more than what it already is, right? Legal documents are archival after all. You can always go back in time. As long as it's a legal document, you should be able to have access to it in most democratic societies that practice divorce, right? So I don't know why divorce is left out of the photo moment, but otherwise we have a very clear idea of what milestones we want archived and what we want recorded, and we want to kind of fix them. Many of you pointed out how, you know, this was from so many months back, so many years back, and you were very personally invested in many cases in those moments, right? And in the change that has taken place between the then, that moment, and the now, where you are today. Either in terms of the difference between then and now, or in terms of progress, how that then moment, the past moment, has kind of developed into where you are today, right, as a family. That idea of progress was not necessarily attached to the earliest forms of the photograph, but it started creeping in to the genre with the greater progresses made in modernity, right? So the first thing I will say about the family photograph is that it is solidly rooted in the ideas of a modern family, right? So what does a modern family look like? It is a nuclear family, right? It is father, mother, children, pets. When you drive behind those cars, or maybe you have a car of your own that has those little graffiti-like things or stenciled in the back, it's usually one person, two people, little people, pets, so on and so forth. That is the traditional nuclear family, right? The nuclear family has in turn morphed to become different iterations of the same thing. It could be mother, children, pets. It could be father, children, pets. It could be a single parent, child, no children, if it's a couple. But the idea of the nuclear family retains the sense that the nucleus of the family is the entirety. Right, that the extended family is cousins, and some of you included your cousins in your family photograph, which is really interesting. It can radiate outwards, and the farther you get from the nucleus, the lesser your investments in that external element of the family. Right, at the heart of the family, as we understand it today in modernity, is the nucleus. And that nucleus we understand to be the most important. This wasn't, again, the case in the history of the family, right? The history of the family is attached to histories of clans, of tribes, of joined families, right? That intermarried, interbred, and led to larger and larger and larger constructions of the family. So the modern family, the nuclear family, is an extremely new development in the history of the family. And the family photograph is very much at the heart of constructing this nucleus, right? There are a lot of people who believe art imitates life, and there are a lot of people who believe that art leads to life. So we see something happen in art and we imitate it in real life, and I would argue that is much more so the case than the other way around. So the family photograph is a piece of art that enables families to imitate it, which is why the things that we memorialize in these family photographs become important to us. What we include, what we don't include, become important exemplars of how, as a family, we must behave and act and be, right? So art in this case is being imitated by life, right? It might be something that you don't agree with, and I would really love to hear why you don't agree with it. If you don't agree with it, if you agree with it, how, and what further comments you have about this is something which I would hope and expect you will contribute to in the comments of the post, right? But think about it, that the stock photos that are available, and so a couple of you used stock photos to talk about the family photos genre, the stock photos that are available present us with an ideal picture of a family, right? Earlier iterations of the ideal family were very problematic in that someone that looked like me would not have been featured in that family photo, right? It would not have looked like my family. right? It would have not looked like the extremely wealthy people's families either, right? Because that's also a sort of isolated body. It's a marginalized body in that it's so few people that can connect with that idea of the family, right? So the earlier iterations in the 20th century of the happy family, the ideal family, tended to look like middle class, hardworking people's families. They tended to be white, that were represented around food, usually, very interestingly, either around food or around holiday festivity, right? Most of these holiday festivities were attached to religious holidays. So things like Christmas became normative photo moments. And you will recall at least a couple of you had photos around Christmas trees or around Christmas time, right? Which is how the Kodak moments were initiated, right? They were supposed to be candid and yet not exactly candid. That developed into other Kodak moments, which were candid, right? So the candid camera moment of a family was, somebody blowing out a candle on a birthday, or somebody giving grandma a hug, or this impulsive emotional moment that encapsulated the family's love for one another, or members of the family's love and respect for one another. And we saw this repeatedly, right? Picture after picture that was idealized in the media showed us what a family's emotions should be it sheer joy, be it love. It needed to look a certain way. And we, as we usually are, extremely insightful and close readers of culture, started reproducing what we saw in the ideal, right? We started imitating it. We went to Walmart, bought similar clothes. We went to Target, bought a nice camera, as nice as a one that we can afford. And we, on Christmas Day or on our birthday or the day we went to see our grandma in, her retirement facility, decided to take a photograph that kind of looked like the idealized image of the family. What this has done, I would say, is it has synthesized the family's dynamic when it comes to archives. What does that mean? Synthesize, meaning it is artificial in some ways, but it is also put together, right? When you are asked to synthesize a statement, you're being asked to take two different things and put them together in a cohesive manner, right? We have done that with the family's archives, right? So when you say, if you were to have a family album, and if you were to flip through them, there would be, and I would hazard a guess, that would be the case for most of us, including me, there would be certain varieties, types of photos that all of us will have, right? Baby photos, for example, sibling photos, right? Siblings being siblings together, pets, right? One of you had a really interesting comment on how pets are also now members of families. So this photograph that you had shared that idea, right? That the family now is not simply a human construction. It is still a nuclear family, but it includes non-human members of the family as well. So that was a really interesting observation. And indeed, as we have moved into modernity, our inclusion of the non-human members of the family have increased, right? That is why the stencil today behind the car includes cat, dog, gerbil, whatever, right? So there are certain types of photos that the stock family photos that we possess now will include. You and I and the vast majority of people participating in the family album will have these. I will stop here and continue into the next lecture. Thank you. See you soon.